Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to look at finding percentages of amounts without calculations. So we're not going to be using a calculator and we're not going to be using any written formula or doing any manual calculations. We are going to be relying on place value. So a good starting point for this is to think about how to find 10% and 1% of an amount. And what you will need to know is that finding 10% is like dividing the amount by 10. And if you want to find 1%, then that is like dividing by 100. And if I show those percentages as fractions, it might make a bit more sense. So 10% means 10 out of 100. Percent's literal meaning is out of 100. Per out of cent 100, as in a century is 100 years. For example, okay, so 10% looks like that, and 1% looks like that, and 100th is just dividing by 100. And if we're looking for 10 out of 100, if you know the rules of fractions, we can take out a common factor of 10 and you would end up with 1/10. So to find 1/10, we divide by 10, and to find 100th, we divide by 100. Okay, so lots of connections there to fractions, divisions. All of this is the same thing. Right, so let's go back and think about how we divide by 10. So let's take an amount such as 360. So to find 10%, we need to divide by 10. And quite often when I ask students what would this be if we divide by 10, they would just say take off the 0. Now in this instance, taking off the 0 is going to work because 360 divided by 10 does indeed equal 36. And although we're not using calculators, along the way, if you want to check with a calculator, that's absolutely fine. So that does work. But now let's have a look what would happen if we wanted to divide 36 by 10. Well, now we haven't got a 0 to take away. So we definitely need to have a different rule for that. But if you understand about this thing here, place value, and what happens when we divide by 10, then you will know that 36 divided by 10 is £3.60. And let's explore why that is. So on the next page, I've got place values. I've got all place values from 1,000,000 down to 1,000th. And I'm going to take that amount we originally had 360, which is obviously 300s, 6 tens, no units. And what really happens when we divide by 10 is that everything shifts one place along place value to the right as you're looking at it. So if we've got a 3 in the hundreds, it's going to become 3 in the tens. And if we've got 6 in the tens, it's going to become 6 in the units. And there we can see it moving along place value. So 360 divided by 10 is 36. I'm going to change colour. And in the next row, we're going to look at what happens if you divide by 100. Well, if we're dividing by 100, we need to move 2 places along place value, and again to the right as you're looking at it, because we are getting 100 times smaller. So if we start with 360, the 3 that's in the hundreds is going to end up 2 places over in the units, And the 6 that was in the tens is going to move 2 places over to the tenths. And we end up with 3.6. So that is the best way to think about it, that movement along place value. And the reason being that our system works in tens. So when we get 10 times, a number gets 10 times bigger, everything shifts to the left as you're looking at it. And if you're multiplying by 100, that's like 10 times 10. So we need to move 2 places. For 1,000, it would be 3 places, and so on. So it's quite important to recognise that that's what's happening with your numbers. I'm going to come back to our original page. Now, many students have been taught the rule, just move the decimal point. Move the decimal point. Actually, let's leave that. Let's see what would happen. So if you had a decimal point from this 360, it would be here at the end. So if we did move the decimal point 1 place to the left, then that would give us an answer of 36. And that would work. Of course, that will work, because we're doing the same thing. If we're moving the decimal point to the left, it will give the same result as if we move the digits to the right on place value.